Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very special guest joining us, James Bergl, an industry leader in tech talent and hiring. If you've been struggling with finding and keeping top tech talent, you're going to want to hear what James has to say. He'll be sharing some insights on what it takes to recruit, identify, and retain the best in the business, especially when it comes to tech sales. So let's dive in. Hi James, it's been a while since we last caught up. How have you been?
Hey, Soren. I've been really well, thank you. Obviously, started the new gig at the beginning of this year, and having a lot of fun in it. But yeah, thanks for having me today. It's been yeah, great to be here.
No, awesome. Well, we're very excited to hear more about what you have to say. And I think I met you close to 2.5 years ago when you were working at Paxed, and now you're working at Bluebird. And I'm sure you've got plenty of insights to share around the recruitment process and also the retention process. Well, James, to start, what do you think are some of the challenges facing the recruitment process of top tech sales talent? What are some of the challenges that are currently in the environment today?
Yeah, when we look at the challenges recruiting for top tech sales talent, there's two sides to the coin in the recruitment process. You've got the employer that's looking for top tech sales talent, and then you've also got the candidates that are looking for their next career move and making sure that they get a great next career move. When we look at the market as a whole today, there's a challenge which I relate and I call sluggishness. There's not a huge amount of momentum with regards to hiring. There's not a lot of people that are going out there and effectively going and hiring lots of salespeople, lots of talent altogether. There's also been a lot of redundancies on the market. There's not a huge amount of venture capital money coming into the market in the other regions. And I think all of this has got a correlation to the recruitment and the hiring process. When we look at what is happening, there's a lot of people on the market going for the jobs that are available, and there's not that many jobs that are available. So the challenge that I'm seeing on the overarching the hiring process, it sounds like it's a great problem to have for employers. They've got a massive choice of who they're going to hire. But the reality is when we look at what they're facing 200 to 300 applications. And what the hiring teams and the hiring manager are doing, they're saying, well, if I've got all of this choice, I want to make sure that I get my absolutely paper perfect candidate. These are the 10 of the 20 characteristics, traits, skill sets, experience that I'm looking for. Hiring team, recruiter, go off and find me this exact perfect match. Now, the reality is doing a couple of things. It's eliminating a whole bunch of people that may be an 8 or 9 out of 10 that don't have maybe one or two of those different things. And it's presenting someone that may appear to be paper perfect, but the reality is they're not what I call compatibility perfect. So what we're facing is actually this scenario where hiring teams are going into this limbo where they think that they've got someone on paper that looks great, but when they get them through the hiring process, they're questioning things. They go, I'm not really sure that this person feels right. There's certain people don't like this person, or they don't connect with them. Go about and find me new people. So I find that a lot of hiring teams and organizations are missing out on top talent because they're just focusing on the wrong things. And it's like a risk mitigation strategy where they say, if I get all 10 things, then that's perfect. The reality is there's very few unicorns or those perfect 10 out of 10s out there. And actually, just like, in a relationship or partnership in human life, sometimes, if you're going out there in the courting days and looking for your partner, you go, I want paper perfect. And you end up getting attracted to someone that's a 7 or an 8 out of 10 because you gel so well. It's the same sort of thing in hiring tech talent. So from my counsel or recommendations or guidance to hiring teams is loosen your requirements up and say that, this is my desired top 10 and I'm willing to interview people that have got at least 7 out of those 10 as opposed to just 10. That'd be one thing. The other piece that we've noticed is that hiring teams want people with relevant experience. So they want people that have done the same role in the same industry for the same sort of technology as previous, historically as to what this organization does. So again, I call that paper perfect, but the reality is you may find someone that is actually an incredible fit from a characteristics and a capability perspective that would need to learn the technology or the value proposition, but isn't being considered because they come from a different industry. That's a problem on the hiring side, and I think it's important that candidates recognize that as well. And when they're applying for roles, is make sure that they truly understand the organization, the hiring team, the hiring manager, the technology, and they customize their application, their covering letter, their CV, so that it really talks to as much relatability to that organization as possible,
Mm.
because that is what hiring teams are looking for, is how closely does this person fit into what we're doing. So if you can just reshape your application, your LinkedIn profile, then that will help you to get more feet in the doors of the applications.
No, totally. Those are some really good points. You mentioned sluggishness there, lack of VC capital, and compatibility. You spoke to that at length. And I think in my interactions with different hiring managers and also uni students or early in career professionals wanting to break into the industry or land their next role after their graduate position, that's often something that comes up in mind, right? How do I get that experience that's required to go into that next role if, you sort of get pigeonholed into that perspective? But to your point, I think a lot of the conversations that I've had, internally and also externally, really speak to the fact of hiring managers leaning into candidates with that subject matter experience. And to your point, the relevancy of that candidate and their, I guess, track record or ability to continue to do well within that domain. But I think going on to the topic which you were alluding to, how do we find that ideal candidate? What do you think, from your perspective, are general characteristics of top tech sales talent?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the characteristics of top tech sales talent, the the things that I looked for as a hiring manager, and I've been in tech sales for 15, 16 years myself and
Mm-hmm.
running high performance teams. I look for specific characteristics over and above experience. And I look for IQ, EQ, drive, coachability, inquisition, and then cultural fit. Those are the characteristics that I look for. You cannot teach those characteristics typically. You
Mm,
can teach someone a value proposition. You can teach someone education on a topic, but you can't teach those core characteristics. So
mm,
particularly when I was hiring sales development reps, which are the entry level roles, and they haven't done this before, my experience is that if someone is intelligent, then they that they've got the intelligence to learn new topics. So I don't mind. I can bring them in here and teach it. And if they've got an aptitude to learn, then I'm happy to take them on. Emotional intelligence, which is really how can you how can you come in and relate to someone very, very quickly? How can you effectively take a situation that may be a little bit awkward and take that away? How can you make someone feel really comfortable in a room? So that ability to read the room, read
mm,
humans,
mm,
etc., is important. Drive, like I want to see someone that's really driven, and particularly in sales,
mm,
I can relate that to competition or sports. But someone that is really driven to achieve something. Like sales is hard. Like everyone looks at salespeople and think, oh, they've got the best job, they make lots of money, and it
yeah.
doesn't look that hard.
Mm,
But the reality is, it is hard, and you need to put in the extra work at times, and you do need to have grit, and you do need to have determination. Everyone can sell, but to become a top seller, you really need to be driven. And I liken salespeople to sports people. In order to reach the top of your game, you need to put in the hard yards to get there. So I'm looking for signs in that interview process of how driven is this person? And I look at two things. I look at the words that come out of their mouth or what's written down, but I also look at how they interact. What is their body language?
mm,
Do they get excited? Do I see, I call it the fire in their belly when they talk about something? Do they get really passionate about that as well? What I think is incredibly important as well in sales is inquisition as well. So curiosity, inquisition, someone that's just thinking about a particular topic or question and then you're saying, why? But why does it operate like
mm,
that? Help me understand this a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more about that. Because in tech sales, I liken it a little bit to a doctor and a patient relationship. When you go to the doctor, if you say I'm sick and the doctor says here's some medicine, you probably aren't that confident that the doctor truly understands what your ailments are if they just give you medicine straight away.
mm,
But if the doctor sits down and they consult you and they ask you, tell me about your symptoms. How long have you had them? Have you had these before? Has anyone else had these, in your family?
mm, mm,
Like
mm.
someone that's really inquisitive, that skill set there is really, really important when it comes to sales as well. Really seeing tech sales as not just a salesperson, tech sales, from the outside world, some of my friends and family think, oh, you're a secondhand car salesman. You're in one of those roles, just wheeling and dealing. It's tech sales is not like that at all. Tech sales
Mm,
is really consultant driven. It's really about helping to solve problems, and you can only really truly do that if you understand their problems, which come from asking great questions. So, in an interview process, ask thoughtful questions, go through and truly think digest and reflect and come back and ask those really thoughtful questions about, you know, the person, the job, the role, the future. And a thoughtful question could be as part of that conversation as well. So those are some of the things that I think are really important. And you need to be able to demonstrate those characteristics as part of your application, and then also demonstrate them as part of your interview process.
No, 100%. I think you've raised some really good points there. Just thinking top of mind, IQ, EQ, I think that's often, brought up in the interviewing process. But coachability, I really enjoyed that sporting analogy that you had, because I think you might have the genetics to be able to run fast, but how do you get the technique right to get that extra 5, 10, 15% to become the Olympic gold medalist, right? It's that coaching and guidance that really is the icing on top when you want to differentiate yourself at the very, very top of the tech sales, game.
And coachability is incredibly important because, yeah, one, it's a sign that you're willing to learn.
Mm,
But also, if someone isn't coachable, then they may not fit into the team, because every single business has got its nuances in terms of how they operate, their culture, their value proposition, their go-to-market strategy. Everyone needs to learn and just
mm,
adapt as they step in. And if you are not willing to step into a new environment, that's a really good sign that you're going to be, flicked out the other end pretty quickly as well. So
totally.
I like to challenge people. I like to look for coachability in an interview process
Mm,
by someone that, gives me examples of where they invest in self-learning, where they ask for advice, they ask for
mm.
support or coaching, or they tell me that their approach is to go off and learn about a particular
Yeah,
topic on their own.
totally.
And then if I don't see that, I like to actually challenge them a little bit, and I ask them to articulate our value proposition,
Mm,
and then I correct them. You know, usually there's always a bit of finesse that
on
they
the
could
spot
add.
coaching.
Yeah, I give them on the spot coaching, and I watch how they respond.
Mm,
And if I see them I can see in their eyes they get kind of mad at me, then that's a
mm,
sign that they're not coachable. If they're
mm,
grateful, they go, "Thank you so much. I didn't think about that like that
mm.
before." Then that's a good sign that how they responded to feedback.
Yeah. And I think coachability has a very strong connection with humility, right? Like in the sense that you're willing and able to receive feedback and action it comes from a place of humility. And I think two other points I really want to double click onto that you made were around inquisition, like the ability for the sales rep to think and reflect on, for example, a sales engagement that they had or a customer conversation, and think about how they can continue to improve themselves. But also you made a point around the fire in your belly. Like, do you have that ambition and self-starter mentality to continue and keep having those conversations even after rejections, after rejections, after rejections? And I think these are traits that probably serve any sales rep well, regardless of where they are in their career stage. But on that topic of self-learning, which you talked about quite a bit, education plays quite a key role within anyone's career. And obviously, we start off in university, or you might go straight into the workforce from high school. And that's normally sort of the formal level of education you have, but we think about certifications, boot camps, or even on the job learning when you're in your role. What do you think, from your perspective, are essential elements of learning and skilling versus nice to have? Do you have a perspective on that?
Education and certification is interesting when it comes to tech sales. When we look at sales specifically, there isn't necessarily like a certification that says that you're a good salesperson or you're not a good salesperson. I think that's why it's so difficult to hire really good salespeople, because good salespeople, and even mediocre ones, can still sell themselves pretty well to get their foot in the door. And then a lot of the times there isn't necessarily success when you've hired a really good person. There's two, when I think about education and certification. Certification I'll part for a minute, but education as a whole, there's two sorts of education. One is education on sales and sales process, sales methodology, sales qualification, etc. And then there's the education on an industry or a product set, as an example. So if we talk education, I think that it's critical to be really well versed and really well trained in a sales process or sales methodology. And there's a spectrum of trainings that you can go on, from a qualification. One of the older school ones is called BANT, budget, authority, need, and time frame. And typically, the saying is that someone's not going to buy from you, and if they don't have budget, they don't have the authority to buy from you, they don't actually have a need, and they don't have a time frame for which they need to buy that product as well.
Mm,
The very modern qualification tool today is medic or medpic, which is bant on steroids, and it really goes into a lot more granularity in terms of what you're needing. And yeah, that is these sorts of tools from an organization perspective allow you to scale your training and enablement. And tech businesses typically will train or invest in medic or med pick training for their sales force today. The really good sales reps do this naturally, but even a great rep will still learn something from going through that sort of training. So that's super important. There's also what I would describe as like sales methodologies, which are how do you go through a sales process. So spin selling is one that I've used over the years and I think is really, really good, which is where you talk about like what situation are we in today, Soren? What is the problem that you've got? What's the implication of that? So how big is the issue that you've got because of that problem? And if you can solve this, like what does that mean for you? That's really where we're able to quantify that. So spin selling is old school, but still really, really relevant. Challenger sales is another methodology which I've used and I'm a big fan and advocate of, because it really talks about how do you challenge the current status quo for where a business is sitting today, and how do you actually teach them something new, educate them as part of the sales process, and then change the goalposts a little bit from potentially what they thought great looked like to showing them what fabulous looks like by just changing the goalposts a little bit. So that challenger minds process is great. And then something like value selling as well. So for me, value is like, what is the ROI of this particular deal? If you go through this process and you get an outcome, like what does that mean to you from a make money or save money perspective? So you put $1 in an investment, how many dollars are you going to get back in return, or how much risk are we going to mitigate from you? So you can just see I've just labeled 5, 6 different sales tools that I've been through in my career. And I'm not an expert in any of them probably anymore, but I absolutely think that it's critical that salespeople invest in these, and they can invest in them themselves by going on to courses like Brilliant. There's other platforms that are out there that they can use as well. There's loads of books. There's loads of YouTube content, like this YouTube show that you run as well. Again, when I look at a candidate, I like to understand what do they do to invest in themselves? How do they continually sharpen their sword and get better at their trade? And if they can talk about podcasts that they listen to or books that they've read, etc., that's a really good sign. But finding some sort of platform for investing is important. When it comes to certifications are an interesting topic. When I think it comes to sales, you don't need to be certified to sell. You can sell whatever you want to. If you are a specialist salesperson, so for example, you're a Microsoft specialist Azure salesperson, you're most likely going to need at least the Azure fundamentals. You're probably going to need the next 2 to 3 steps up from that to really have a sharp sword when you're having those conversations. And the reality is that credibility you get from the certification will help to give you additional clout as part of that deal process. Is it a must to get the deal? No, it's not. Is it going to give you additional credibility and capability? I think it is. If we're then looking at technical roles, then certifications are a great way of differentiating yourself from the competition. Have you been certified in Sophos? Have you been certified in Microsoft, different clouds as an example? It demonstrates capability. The other unfortunate fact, we're helping an MSP in Sydney hire a level 3 technician at the moment. The challenge with the MSP or the channel is that there isn't really a certification for roles. What is a level 1 or a level 2 is often subjective in the eyes of those that are hiring for it. Which means that it is actually quite difficult. So I think that certifications can play a role in demonstrating your ability to deliver an outcome at a particular depth in a technology stack. But again, that's probably in the more technical side roles as opposed to the go-to-market roles.
That's a great point. There are many formal and informal ways to learn. However, certifications are a useful way to recognize your competency in a specialized topic, which is why our sponsor Brilliant is here to help you differentiate in the job market. Brilliant is a platform where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. If you're like me and you love learning, but struggle to find the time to do so, then Brilliant is the perfect learning platform for you. Learning a little every day is one of the most important things you can do. both for personal and professional growth. Brilliant helps you build real-world knowledge in minutes a day. It's the complete opposite of mindless scrolling. In fact, Brilliant's comprehensive range of math courses are built for learners of any level, whether you want to brush up on fundamentals or challenge yourself with advanced concepts. For example, this would be an interesting course for students wanting to learn more about general mathematical sequencing. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/techpods or scan the QR code on screen, or you can click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription, so there's no better time to try Brilliant. Now let's get back to the video. Yeah, that's a very valid point, right? Like even with technical skills certifications, there's also often the discussion of recency. How recent did they attain that, and are they continuing to sharpen that sword? But from what you shared, there are a couple of themes there if I was to double click into them. First of all, self-learning seems to be a very consistent theme. Reading seems to be what you've done quite a lot to get up to speed on. You mentioned spin methodology, BANT, and challenger sales model. So I think these are things that will probably benefit aspiring salespeople in the tech industry, right? So that's one great takeaway that I just got. You also mentioned a little bit around certifications from the perspective of solution sales. It might benefit them more if they, took on a couple more certifications to help them become a more credible voice, for example, in Azure or even modern work within the Microsoft cloud stack. And yeah, these are things that can help add to their market value as well when they're recruiting, right? These are things that can add to the process of salary negotiation or career progression along the pathway if they were to move into a different role.
And I'll give you a little tip for those that are looking for new roles, and you're on LinkedIn as an example. The way that LinkedIn's recruiting tools work is they've got Boolean searches where you can type in keywords, if and capabilities, as if you've got certifications, such as, AZ 900 as an example, put that into your profile and that will actually get picked up by recruiters. So there's a little tip there if you do want to make yourself marketable.
Is that part of the applicant tracking system, like the ATS, or is that separate?
That would be separate. So LinkedIn have a solution which we use called LinkedIn Recruiter. It's their recruiting license, but it's like Sales Navigator on steroids. It allows you to get much more granular search capabilities within LinkedIn. But typically, the way it works is you type in, I'm looking for a candidate with Microsoft Azure and this certification. If you're a technical resource and you don't have that listed, then you're not going to float to the top. So make sure that you do keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. And if you are, looking to be marketable and increase your value, then certifications, when we talk technical roles, will absolutely give you a differentiator in an interview process. If you've got 2 to 3 to 4 relevant recent accreditations, then you will be more attractive, certainly to get your foot in the door than someone that hasn't got them as well.
Yeah, so certifications definitely play a critical role in making sure that you're being identified for the right roles and progressing your career, especially on a technical sales path. Moving on from the concept of education, I know we've talked about self-learning and the ability to go deeper into a specific solution. What do you think are some of the top skills salespeople should be continuing to nurture and develop over the course of their career?
In terms of skills to invest in, there are 3 skills or areas of learning that I would recommend any sales rep continually invest in. One is continuous investment in sales methodology or process capability. So going back to the methodologies, whether it's MEDPIT from a qualification and process capability, whether it's a challenger or value selling, whether it's command of the message. Even if you've been through all of these before and you're a seasoned rep, going through them again, I can absolutely assure you with 100% confidence, you are going to get nuggets that you can apply. And we naturally forget stuff over time. So continually investing in sales capability is number one. The other piece that I would strongly recommend is invest in staying relevant in the tools and technologies that are available for salespeople today. In the last few years, AI and automation have changed and the way in which salespeople go to market and do their roles. And if you're not at least investing time in understanding what is available and how to use some of those outreach type tools, then you're going to fall behind the competition. So, if you're a seasoned sales guy or gal, then make sure that you are keeping relevant, keeping up with the times with the sorts of technologies that will allow you to gain efficiencies and do your role at scale. And then thirdly, particularly if you're as you're carving out your niche or your capabilities as a sales rep, like invest in the industry or the vertical that you're you're becoming an expert in. So
Mm,
some of the roles that we're hiring for, say, like I'm looking for someone in FSI, financial service industry, as an example.
mm,
They're looking for someone with deep expertise in that, or they're looking for someone with deep expertise that has sold to government. So
mm.
if you find yourself naturally gravitating towards a particular vertical, then become an expert. Understand that industry like the back of your hands and keep up to date with what is happening in that industry so that you can make yourself more attractive in the eyes of people that are looking for that capability.
Yeah, great. You touched on communication, refining that command of the message training. And I think communication is particularly important whether you're interacting with internal peers, colleagues, and also externally, right? The front that you have. You also touched on relevancy. I think with the onset of generative AI, there are many ways in which we can gain efficiency in what we do at work and also remain competitive within the market and getting those productivity benefits in our day to day, right? Who doesn't want those extra few hours? And last but definitely not the least, and one of the questions that I get quite often, right, from early in career professionals, should I stay on that generalist path or should I go a little bit deeper and start carving out a pathway to become a specialist? And that's something that I think about, and my perspective sort of swings each way now and then between certifications and actually continuing to refine that craft within the field, right? Being able to have those conversations and get better and better whilst practicing the knowledge that you would have, adopted from the formal education. So those are some really good points, but thinking from the perspective of the company now, you've
Yeah.
made that dream hire, you've onboarded them. How do you continue to invest and develop them into a future, senior IC or a future senior leader within the organization?
Yeah, retaining talent is really important. When we think of the cost of hiring and then the cost of rehiring, it's significant. I think that the investment in retaining is often forgotten about. Yeah, one of the things that I would emphasize, and this is, in the the pre-hire as well as the post-hire, is that this is a partnership. This is a partnership, and both should be treated as equals. You should be treating your candidates as an equal as you go through the process, and remembering that high quality candidates are interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. And if they don't like the way in which your process operates, it gives them a lens into how the business operates. They will pull out, and we've had that happen a number of times. And just on that topic, I would say that I want to come up with an analogy. Like hiring is my analogy is like hiring is a bit like the housing market in a way. When the housing market is booming, it's what we would describe as a seller's market. It's a candidate's market in those sort of situation. When it pulls back, if we have a look at houses in Sydney, you weren't getting great deals on houses in Mosman. You weren't getting great deals on houses in blue chip places,
Mm-mm-mm.
right? Quality holds its value. It's the same in a candidate in an employer's market. Quality candidates hold their value, and you're not going to get them at a steal. You still need to articulate a value proposition for why they should join your organization, and don't expect to get them at a bargain basement
Mm,
price, because they will not be dropping their price that much because they don't need to.
mm,
So
mm,
remember that as well. When it comes to retaining, I think investing in your staff is important. So investment is going to be different to everyone. So what is it that person is looking for? What have you sold them as part of the pre-hire process? Is it a great commission plan? Is it career growth? Is it leadership opportunity? Is it opening them to a development opportunity of some sort? Where I see things go wrong is where a candidate comes in, a high quality candidate comes in, and the comp plan is not realistic, and they come in
mm,
and they're given something, an expectation up here from a quota perspective. But the reality is the business isn't in a position to get there yet. They don't have the marketing, the leads, the value proposition, the product that is actually going to deliver that much revenue. And if a candidate cannot get their earning potential, then they're going to leave straight
mm,
away. So that's something to think about from a career path perspective. Yeah, I would say ask your candidates what their goals and ambitions are, and you could also do that as part of the interview process. But if you don't provide that career growth and that step up, and certainly at least shine the light on what the future looks like, then they may think that that don't have a destination worthwhile at your business. So if someone is looking for progression, and no one within the business is getting progressed, and it's very difficult, I can't get promoted unless my boss leaves, sort of situation, then
mm, mm.
you'll reach a position where those candidates tap out as well.
Oh yeah, those were some really good tips on, some of the top skills that sales reps should be thinking about developing. going one step further from the perspective of the hiring company, once you've made that dream hire, how can companies be thinking about investing into the growth and development of their staff?
Retaining staff is critical, and there's so much cost goes into hiring and then rehiring if you get it wrong as well. And a lot of that could be prevented if you, one, got the right people on board, but then secondly, just invested in the right areas. So there's three areas that I would encourage all hiring teams and managers to think about. One is make sure that their comp plan is realistic and they can make the money that you told them that they could do. There's so many times that a rep is disgruntled because they're hitting 50 to 60% of their number. And the question I ask is how are you sitting compared to everyone else in the organization? And often the majority of people are at 50 to 60% of the number. If that's the case, the comp plan is probably misaligned. If they're not hitting their number, they are going to be looking for a role elsewhere.
Mm,
Number two is show them that you care about them. At the end of the day, they're humans, and there's always an ego associated with everyone, but salespeople like to feel loved as well. And show that you care, set up time, run one-to-ones, ask them how they're doing, ask them what roadblocks they've got in the way, ask them what you can do to help them.
mm, mm,
And that connection and that communication is actually incredibly valuable. It doesn't take a lot of time or investment, but just being there to support them and show them that you care and show them that you're committed to their success really gives the right intention that this is an organization that cares about them. And then number three is have a career plan for them. If you're hiring young, hungry sales reps, then they're going to want to progress in the organization. They're not going to want to sit in the same role for 3, 4, 5 years. They're going to see that they grow their territory, the size of organizations that they work, their responsibilities, whether they progress into management or a bigger territory. They need to have some sort of trajectory that is
mm,
demonstrating career growth as well. So those are the three things. And I can talk to an example when when I ran Datto as an example. We hired young, hungry SDRs, which are the cold calling guys and gals. We would hire them with an intention that we were going to be placing them as sales reps. We would bring them on board and say, this is a 12-month assignment, and I want you to come on, earn your stripes, demonstrate me that you've got the grit and tenacity to be successful, learn the industry, learn the trade, and then once there's an opportunity and the business is growing, we're going to pop you into that next role.
mm,
And that created the most magical culture whereby there was just continual progression. Almost all of our sales reps in the early days came through that path of SDR to junior account executive or account manager to senior account executive, account manager. There was that progression, and it did two things. One is it kept everyone hungry and it
mm,
provided a light, and they saw their teammates getting promoted. But two, it also created a bench of really high quality talent that knew our business better than anyone else and anyone outside that we could hire and promote a lot more cost effectively than if we had to go out to market for it. Remember, it's a lot more cost effective to hire internally than it is to hire externally. And if you set your business up to do that from the beginning, then you're going to be in a much better position down the line. It may be a slight investment up front to do that, but if you
mm.
get that working well for you, then it provides you with longevity and a culture of progression and growth and everyone making money as well.
No, totally. And those are three great points to end on. Career earnings, making sure that you're meeting the earning expectations of any candidate that you bring through, right? No one wants to be on 50% of the comp plan. They'd rather be exceeding that comp plan. So making sure that the expectations are well aligned to what they're getting paid, first of all. Secondly, you talked about care. I think that's such an intangible element that's often, overlooked at times. One-on-ones may be something that's able to be cancelled in some organizational cultures, but making sure that you prioritize that for your team, it really sends an informal signal that you care about what's happening in their life and also their professional development. And last but definitely not the least, thinking about their long-term career plan. So how do we continue to add in those milestones? You gave a very good analogy at Datto where you built this magical culture where sales reps were able to come in and also progress into different roles within the organization. How does your organization think about internal progression, right? To your point, the cost of rehiring and cost of, losing talent is very, very high. And, in a very competitive economic environment right now, you want to be reducing costs as much as possible and retaining the top talent that you currently have. So we've really appreciated your time today, James. Thanks for spending this morning with us today. I'm sure our audience will be deeply appreciative of the insights that you've shared from your experience working at a top SaaS recruitment company. I think there are great insights around how they can be increasing their market value through the role of education. What are, some of the top 2 or 3 skills that they should continue to refine and develop, and how companies can be thinking about the development and retainment of top talent within their tech organization. And thanks for coming along and watching this first little interview with James. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you have any questions for myself or James, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe so that you can follow along with any future videos. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.